By January 1943, the once mighty German Sixth Army had become a shadow of itself. The soldiers who had marched confidently toward the Volga months earlier now stood freezing, starving, and surrounded in the ruins of Stalingrad. The winter showed no mercy. Snow drifted through shattered rooftops, filling rooms that had once been homes, factories, and shelters. Now they were graves inside bunkers. Officers huddled around dim lanterns, their faces pale, their hands trembling from cold and hopelessness. Maps lay spread across tables, but the lines on those maps no longer offered solutions. Only reminders of how little remained. Radio transmissions grew weaker each day. Static replaced orders. Hope was replaced by silence. Across the frozen ruins, German soldiers wrapped themselves in blankets taken from abandoned houses, trying to stay alive for one more night. Some clutched letters from home, their corners worn from being read over and over in the dim light of burning paper scraps. Outside, the Soviet encirclement tightened like a steel ring. Every path out of the city was gone. Every supply line cut. The German army had become a prisoner of its own ambition. Yet still, many refused to accept the truth. They waited for relief, for reinforcements that would never arrive, for aircraft that could no longer break through the snow-filled skies, for promises that had long since evaporated into the cold air. Hunger gnawed at every man. Frostbite claimed fingers, toes, and lives long before shells or bullets reached them. The dead were covered in snow where they fell, their forms blending into the frozen city. Inside the Red Army positions, soldiers watched the suffering across the lines with a mixture of sorrow and grim resolve. They understood hunger, they understood cold. But they also understood what this battle meant for their families, their homeland, their survival. Day by day, the resistance weakened. Surrender began quietly. A group of German soldiers emerged from a basement, hands raised, their faces hollow. Others followed, slowly at first, then in growing numbers. They carried no weapons now, only the weight of defeat. Soviet troops approached cautiously, but there was no fight left in the frozen figures trembling before them. War had drained every last drop of strength, leaving behind only exhausted men who longed for warmth, food, and the chance to live. In the heart of the trapped army, General Friedrich Paulus sat inside a cold, dim bunker. He stared at maps that had lost meaning, at officers who waited for a decision that could no longer be delayed. Outside, Stalingrad whispered the same truth over and over through the howling wind. It is over. On February 2nd, 1943, the message finally reached every corner of the ruined city. The surrender was complete. The German Sixth Army, the pride of Hitler's Eastern campaign, was no more. Tens of thousands of prisoners began the slow, painful walk through snow-covered streets, passing the ruins of factories, schools, and homes that had once defined the industrial heart of the Soviet Union. Some limped, some leaned on each other, some simply stared at the ground, their minds numb from months of suffering. Soviet soldiers watched them pass, maintaining discipline, but unable to ignore the human cost etched into every weary step. The guns grew silent. The smoke slowly faded. And for the first time in 200 days, Stalingrad felt the faint echo of peace. Civilians emerged from cellars and basements, faces thin, eyes hollow, but alive. They walked carefully through the ruins, searching for neighbors, searching for family, searching for whatever remained of the lives they once knew. Some found familiar faces. Others found only silence. The city was broken, but it had endured. And in its endurance, A new chapter began. Amid the devastation, men and women began clearing rubble, lifting stones, rebuilding walls with hands cracked from winter. It was slow work, painful, exhausting, endless. But each stone lifted was a declaration. We are still here. The Battle of Stalingrad had ended, but its aftermath would shape generations. The cost had been unimaginable, the suffering immeasurable, and yet from the ruins, life would begin again. For now, the city stood in solemn silence, its broken buildings illuminated by a pale winter sun, and in that light, one truth remained. In Stalingrad, there were no victors, only survivors.